How do I help myself and my family with all of the changes happening around us? Ladies, I'm gonna start with you first, Kelli. What's your response to Tony? Because he's not the only one that has this challenge, and I'm sure most people maybe haven't even asked themselves the question. They probably have said, how can I help my family? But they haven't included themselves in this question. Oh, we're gonna unmute you real quick here, Kelli. All panelists, go ahead and unmute yourselves because we're gonna have a discussion and walk through this together.
Okay, I was just saying, I think that's an excellent question. And I think you're right, something that we've all struggled with throughout this time. And I think if people focus on, this is really a time to get back to basics. This is a time to focus on what we have control over, because there are so many things beyond our control right now. So focusing on staying active, getting outside, eating healthy, getting good sleep, and trying, there's things changing, again, that are beyond our control all the time. So if we can focus on developing our new schedule, what this looks like right now, developing a schedule, making things as predictable as possible for ourselves and our children. Children do very well with structure, so trying to make things, the things that we can control, making those predictable. So keeping our good nighttime routines, reading the book, tucking them in, having these nice predictable moments when so many other things are, seem a little chaotic and out of our control. So making those sometimes in our family and our schedules to be predictable, and they know what's coming, in those certain times is the best thing that we can do right now, making those rituals.
Yeah, I like how you say get back to basics. And I know sometimes, things are all up in the air and people are confused on how they even create structure. How do they get to a space to create structure? Breanna, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think Kelli hit the nail right on the head. Schedules, that's a big, giant, important word. Even for those that tend to run by the seat of their pants, schedules are so important in their own right, particularly for the kids, but even for the adults. It helps to set the basics, set the standards, sets boundaries. Everyone knows what's expected on a written schedule. We start to get a verbal schedule and things kind of go awry on that. So as much as you can do for your family, even for yourself, is creating that schedule. If you have kids that are home all day long, helping set a schedule that's written down so they can visualize it. Kids tend to do much better visualizing schedules than being told, first we're going to do this, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do this. And so having that written place where everybody can go, everybody knows the expectation, but also keep in mind, kind of like the question presented was, we have everybody fighting for bandwidth. Many individual households, you have people fighting for the bathroom. That may or may not be a new problem, but being home all day long, your schedules are different than maybe they were before you were home all day long for those that have online or even hybrid learning schedules. So even scheduling something like this one gets the bathroom from 8 to 9, the other from 9 to 10.
Scheduling bathroom visits.
But scheduling it, if you have to just kind of, again, like Kelli said, back to the basics, scheduling out things that you would never imagine you'd have to schedule out, write them down. It sets the baseline expectation. You know how to follow through because whatever the schedule says is what we do unless there's a bigger issue. And then you just make sure you're communicating that with one another so that folks are aware that changes are approaching.
So what you're saying is we're going to have to end up creating structures that did not necessarily happen before, because some people just flock to, I'm going to get back to my normal schedule.
Yeah.
The schedule you're creating is not going to be a normal one.
Correct. And chaos, when chaos surrounds us, or when you feel like life's out of control, the best way to feel like you're back into control and relieve that anxiety, even relieve some of the depression and the stress of feeling like it's all on you, is creating opportunities for others to understand what you need and what's going on without actually having to say it out loud 10 times a day, 15 times a day, however many times you got a kiddo or a significant other asking you what's going on today.
So Lindsey, you've worked with, I'm sorry. What, did you have something, Kelli?
I was just going to say, I think being as proactive at that as possible, but sometimes it does have to be reactionary. Like if you notice there's a problem with the bathroom and people fighting over it, then you have to do a schedule for that. And I was just thinking in my own life, I have an online learner and then a hybrid learner, and then I'm working from home. And so we realized very quickly that we had to set up a schedule for our lunchtime because we didn't all have lunch at the same time. And if we tried to make lunch while my online learner was in school, right by the kitchen, that was very disruptive. So we had to actually make a schedule like, okay, this is when you're going to go into the kitchen. This is when you're going to go into the kitchen. So it seems silly, but it was necessary to make things flow in a way that wasn't disruptive for other people.
Did it work?
Yes, it is working.
Yeah. Good. So, Lindsey, you work with families alongside the children. How do you persuade a child to go into this form of using a schedule? How do you get buy-in that this is something that we need to do for all of us?
I mean, I think that when there may be resistance at the beginning, but when a child, I think children really seek what the boundaries are, and they will push past them if they aren't there. But when they know that they are there, they know that those boundaries are there to keep them safe, and everybody feels better when they know when they're going to be able to get their work done, when they know when they're going to get rest, when they know how they're going to get love and attention and appreciation. And so having those schedules, I think, really, really helps. And I don't have a quick tactic to convince a child, but I think you show them. You don't have to tell them, you show them how it works, and they learn through that experience.
So I want to go back to another part of Tony's question, which is the myself component. How do I create space for myself? And Dr. Hill, I want to flock back to you on this one. So in the midst of everything going on, I mean, obviously it's key for an individual's mental health to separate themselves. How do you encourage people that, one, that's okay to do that, and two, what are the steps that folks can take to make that happen?
Right. So I think for people working from home, we talked about boundaries, and one of those has to be a physical space. So I would definitely create a physical space that is your area. This is where you work. And not only for the children to know that's separate, that's the workspace, and we don't go within that workspace, or if they are allowed to, when that's allowed. But also for the parent to have space that is their own, that's not work, to have a separate space for just themselves too, because I think the boundaries get, very overlapping right now with working from home. And so it's really good to have your own space too, that you can take a break from work and from family life, just to be able to reflect for yourself, do some meditation, do some stretching, just have that time to just kind of rest your brain and your emotions and everything that goes along with that too. It's really, it's actually critical. And some people feel like they just don't have time for that. But even for 5 minutes to be able to breathe is really important.
So Breanna, does that need to go in the schedule?
That should go on the schedule, yeah. Deidre, I actually had a colleague tell me she transitioned from working in the office to having to be home all day long doing teletherapy on the computer on Zoom all day long. And Zoom brain is a thing. It's a hard thing, but it's a thing. And so she told me in order to decompress, she physically had to take herself at the end of the day or the end of her last session, and she, from her own home, she went out to her vehicle and sat in the vehicle, turned on like the music or something like that, and sat there for about 5 minutes, just kind of decompressing from the day, taking in her space, taking in some fresh air, taking in whatever she needed right at that moment. So very much, Kelli, getting removed from your work life and making a transition to home life is really important. And even more, with everybody, many people starting to work from home, being able to have that workspace, like you said, but also setting that boundary for yourself. I'm not going to re-enter the computer or my email until 7 o'clock the next morning, 8 o'clock, whenever I'm supposed to log in, because since we're working from home, we may or may not feel that we have an obligation to be available much more often. But in theory, we want to keep to a standard 8-hour workday, whatever that workday, you know, take yourself out for lunch. If you were someone who liked to go out for lunch, you know, within obviously safety precautions now with COVID, take yourself out to lunch, or at least take yourself out to pick up something for lunch. If you're someone who enjoys getting out of the house, kids kind of change that. If your kids are able to be home by themselves for 30, 45 minutes, you know, go out, do something, take a walk during the day, just like you might during the office hours. You need a minute away from that physical office space. So taking care of yourself involves setting those boundaries from that physical office space and getting fresh air, getting those breaks, just as you would if you were actually in the office.
Yeah. Lindsey, did you want to add something?
Yeah, well, I was thinking what Breanna's talking about. I was talking with parents of middle schoolers just a week ago, and we were talking about what we need during times of imbalance and uncertainty. And the list that the middle schoolers came up with was as diverse as they were, right? You know, some kids needed some quiet time. Some kids needed somebody to process with. Some kids needed sleep. Some kids needed a distraction or a game to be playing. And so I think for us to recognize what we need to fill up and also and pursue those things, whether it's that walk around the block or going out to the car, imagining that commute, whatever the thing might be. When we know what we need to fill back up and we pursue those things, it also models and gives permission to kids to ask for what they need so that they can also get what they need to fill back up.